While Bulgarian animation has been very obscure in the English-speaking world, even for Eastern European standards, it has an exceptionally creative, varied, and unique history. Bulgarian animators were given more freedom than in other art forms, so were able to challenge official ideology and not be constrained by the state-sanctioned style of socialist realism. The country's animation took off in the 1950s and 60s and peaked in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. In the 60s, Bulgarian animators worked in a flat, unrealistic style similar to that of the American company UPA, which was popular in the 40s and 50s and created famous characters like Mr. Magoo. However, American media was not allowed in communist Bulgaria, so it's unclear if it had any direct influence. Bulgarian animation was similar to the Zagreb film style out of Yugoslavia, which was also part of the Eastern Bloc. Both had an unrealistic modernist look and heavily utilized mixed media and collage with the inclusion of cutouts and photographs. And both countries at times produced films with metafictional postmodern touches. There were also inspirations that were distinctly Bulgarian, such as poster art and folk art. The vast majority of these works of animation are shorts, and only a few feature films were produced. The first major animator was Todor Dinov, often called the father of Bulgarian animation. Dinov directed dozens of animated shorts, as well as live-action features, and also made comics and illustrated children's books. He studied in Moscow under the famous Soviet animator Ivan Ivanov Fano, and was the founder of Bulgaria's first studio dedicated to animation. Dinov worked mainly in traditional animation, but also made some mixed media shorts with cutouts or live-action footage. His work was modern-looking with an unrealistic flat style, with solid color or vague textured backgrounds. His films were often satirical and containing no dialogue. His early 1960s short, The Story of the Pine Branch, is flat-looking with very simple characters, backgrounds of a single solid color, and minimal dialogue. In his wordless metafictional Duet from 1961, we see the film strip itself when it starts malfunctioning, and the characters interact with the edges of the frame and even start destroying the film. The backgrounds are just solid colors, and the simple-looking characters resemble those of UPA film. Similarly, his short Jealousy takes place entirely with a solid blue background. This one is mixed media, as Dinov used photo cutouts combined with traditional animation of simple line drawings. Also, like in Zagreb film, the characters are made up of geometric shapes. His 1965 short, The Daisy, deals with freedom and authoritarianism in a very simple story. A man tries to cut a daisy but can't, and goes to more and more extreme lengths to do so, including a saw, steamroller, and explosives. This all leads to the ironic ending where an innocent little girl comes along and gently plucks the daisy. The message in favor of individuality is clear and contradicted official state ideology. The film takes place in front of a highly textured but abstract background, and there are also geometric character designs, as the man has a rectangle for a torso and lines for limbs. The short Banished from Eden is also mixed media, using cutouts of fine art and live-action footage. In it, a flautist enters heaven and his music changes the status quo there, so the short has a message promoting creativity and individuality. Dinov's 1980 short The Reign of Paris uses limited animation and has minimal motion. It's yet another example of mixed media in his career, combining the animation with paintings and live action. One of the earliest female Bulgarian animators was Radka Bakvarova, whose career began in the early 1960s. Her traditionally animated dialogue-free short The Snowman is done in a cute and simple style and depicts a sentient snowman and icicles. Her early 70s short, The Wondrous Candy Rooster, is more adventurous and completely unrealistic, with an interesting use of color and extremely distorted perspective. Her next short, Beach, was also wordless with a psychedelic look due to being very colorful and having wobbly outlines. It's mixed media due to a boat made of real newspaper and has a blank background. Another major director of the 60s and 70s was Donyo Donyev, who co-directed the previously mentioned short Duet. His work was mainly comedic, lacking dialogue, and done in a cartoony style, but not necessarily aimed at children. His most famous work is The Three Fools, a series of 11 shorts that total an hour and 40 minutes of runtime. The titular fools get into goofy hijinks in front of mostly blank, textured backgrounds. It contains adult humor like sexual content and cross-dressing, as well as a metafictional joke. His 1972 short Clever Village was also comedic and done in a cute, simple style with lots of identical people and houses. The story is of villagers trying to solve a problem, but just making it worse, and the short pokes fun at human foolishness. His next work, De Facto, was yet again a comedic satire with vague, textured backgrounds, and this one parodies how people are always looking for scapegoats. Filmmaker Zdenka Deutscheva worked as an assistant director under Todor Dinov before starting her own directorial career in the late 50s. She worked in traditional animation, but her 1972 short Passion was mixed media, as it included real photos, and like so many of these films, tells a simple wordless story with vague textured backgrounds. Deutscheva then satirized human nature in her short film Horoscope. As the title suggests, it is based around zodiac imagery and consists of 12 quick vignettes. Her 1982 short, When Snowflakes Covered All Over, seems to be more for kids with its cutesy character designs. Starting in the late 60s, director Ivan Veselinov put out often wordless shorts featuring elongated figures and unsurprisingly vague textured backgrounds. His psychedelic and bizarre film The Devil in the Church satirizes religion. It also completely avoids realism, with an extremely flat look and having a church rapidly shrink and grow in time with music. The soundtrack is quite eclectic, going from funky jazz to organ music to a circus theme. Veselinov deals with paranoia in his largely monochrome 1973 short Fear, where an elongated-looking man is so afraid of a perceived threat, he walls himself off from the world. He takes a sci-fi turn in The Passenger, which has odd robotic vehicles and a jazz soundtrack. And finally, in his 1986 short Wolf Story, Veselinov satirizes military and religion using very basic-looking elongated characters. Animator Prokhor Proikov directed shorts throughout the 70s and 80s that were tinged with surrealism. His 1972 short At the Cinema was aimed at kids with cute animal characters, but still included surreal touches. Proikov's mixed media short Exhibition is brimming with surreal impossible events, brought to life with both 2D animation and a technique known as pixelation, where human beings are posed frame by frame to simulate motion. Proikov also dabbled in sci-fi with the trippy, colorful short Stardust from 1973. In Buffo Synchronists, he brought back the cute trio of a kid and two animals from At the Cinema, and includes famous music like George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue and Hot Butter's electronic hit Popcorn. This one takes place in mostly undefined environments, but with small parts of them more highly detailed. Stoyan Dukov also gained attention starting in the 1970s, with dialogue-free, flat-looking shorts like Minnie. This one is reminiscent of Veselinov with elongated figures and a jazz score. Dukov's darkly humorous short Solo from 1982 is more cartoony, but still in the typical flat style with minimalist backgrounds. The crude-looking, highly sexual short film March contains rapid shifts in perspective, and both characters and buildings are oddly shaped. Possibly the most idiosyncratic animator to come out of Bulgaria was Rumen Petkov. One of his earliest works was The Adventures of Choco the Stork and Bako the Frog, a series of shorts that was made from 1979 to 1990. The characters were also put in comics by Petkov, and he was highly active in that medium as well. We can see the beginnings of his style with surreal dark humor and characters that move in odd ways, but this was nothing compared to the insanity that was to come. His 1982 feature film Treasure Planet is easily one of the most unhinged animated films ever made. It was loosely based on the 1883 Robert Louis Stevenson novel Treasure Island, but set in space. At just over an hour long, it qualifies as the first Bulgarian animated feature film. Treasure Planet features freakish, ugly character designs and incredibly strange animation where people always walk and move extremely unnaturally. The humor is absurd and often slapstick. Petkov included characters with names from the book like Long John Silver, who has a peg leg, but also robots, ghosts, alternate dimensions, and even an unauthorized appearance of Mickey Mouse. There are also metafictional elements like referencing Robert Louis Stevenson himself, and the film has a synth-heavy electronic soundtrack. Petkov's film actually has the same title and basic concept as a 2002 Disney film, and the obscurity of this film would lead one to think it's just a coincidence, but some sort of inspiration can't be ruled out. Then Petkov directed the short film Marriage, which won the Short Palme d'Or at Cannes. The surreal, very sexual film is highly unrealistic, with buildings changing shape when people enter. Everything is very wobbly looking and the camera wildly moves in and out. Objects constantly morph into highly suggestive shapes, with obvious Freudian implications. The award at Cannes was the most prestigious prize a piece of Bulgarian animation has ever received, but Bulgarian officials didn't like its emphasis on eroticism. Petkov showed his range in Archipelago, done in a much different, more painterly style. His 1986 short The Four Wishes was strange and surreal in content, but more conventional in terms of animation and design. Petkov eventually moved to the US and worked on episodes of popular animated TV series, such as Johnny Bravo, Dexter's Laboratory, and Duckman. Another important Bulgarian animator of the 1980s was Velislav Kazakov, who worked in traditional animation, making surreal shorts, sometimes for kids and sometimes for adults, while usually avoiding dialogue. In 1981, he directed Self-Sacrifice, another short with a wobbly look, this time to depict lots of bizarre creatures devouring each other in front of a solid white background, and for some reason some of them wear human clothes. Kazakov's short film Cuckoo depicts a mental hospital full of people walking around doing absurd things, making silly noises and faces. It contains an early example of one little stylistic touch Kazakov seemed to like, and that was characters' eyes multiplying while they're in motion, so it looks like they have 4 or even 6 eyes for a second. Kazakov's 1988 short Libido was definitely not for kids, with sexual content and anthropomorphic flies with breasts. Also working throughout the 80s was director Boyko Kanev, who utilized a variety of methods, including cutouts, stop motion, and cell animation. His films were full of ugly, oddly shaped people, and he didn't make any attempts at realism. His 1981 sci-fi short The Balance featured freaky-looking aliens and giant floating eyes and ears. His next short, The Bomb, satirized the military and religion with cutouts and a jazz score. Kanev showed his versatility in Drawing Lesson, a stop-motion short that combined animation with live action. He went back to cutouts in the creepy Progress, done in an unusual style with odd-looking character designs. Kanev won the Best Short Award at the Annecy Film Festival for A Crushed World, where everyone is made up of paper and they are crumpled up, flattened, and burnt. The major female Bulgarian animator of the 1980s was Antoaneta Botusharova, who used cutouts in traditional animation and often made films about animals. Her 1981 short If I Were Older consists of cutout animation with a flat, minimal style. From 1987, Forget-Me-Nots was not as cartoony as her other shorts and had more of a fine art influence. In 1989's Gamble Luck, animals walk around on 2 legs and wear human clothes, and 1991's A Frightful Dog features a dog, cat, pig, and birds. Moving on to the post-communist era, Zlatin Radev's internationally acclaimed Can film uses stop motion to animate Can people to comment on dictatorships and revolution. Cans get beaten by police and thrown in prison, and a Can dictator speaks to an adoring crowd. The dystopian short contains dark humor and an ominous ending, and won numerous awards across the globe, even getting a nomination for a Student Academy Award. Bulgarian animation has struggled in the 21st century, largely due to a lack of funding, but one important director is Ivan Rusev, known for his satirical shorts. His 2003 short Yellow consists of cutout animation, with muted colors and ugly, freaky-looking characters, and like Can film, has some dark humor. Animator Teodor Yushev was born in Bulgaria, but moved to Canada and worked there starting in 1999. He directed abstract shorts such as Tower Bower, which took influence from Soviet constructivist art. While like the previous century, 21st century Bulgarian animation was almost entirely short films, there is one exception, Bulgar the Movie, which was the first Bulgarian animated feature since the 80s. It started as a comedic web series and is often compared to Family Guy and South Park, but the humor is very specific to Bulgaria. If you'd like to dive deeper into the world of Bulgarian animation, many of these shorts are available to watch for free on YouTube. There's a letterboxd list someone made that has links to them that I'll put in the description. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching, and please check out my Patreon page, which I'll also link to in the description.